Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going to explore one of the most fascinating and mysterious places in the United States, the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. This is not just a beautifully designed landmark surrounded by breathtaking scenery, but also a location that has inspired countless ghost stories, cultural legends, and one of the most iconic works in modern horror literature. Nestled in the town of Estes Park, at the edge of the Rocky Mountains, the Stanley Hotel was originally built in the early 20th century as a luxurious retreat. Its classic architecture, stunning views, and crisp mountain air made it a popular destination for those seeking rest and relaxation. On the surface, it seemed to be the picture of peace and elegance, yet, over the decades, the hotel became far more famous for something else: its reputation as a place surrounded by stories of the unexplained. What truly propelled the Stanley Hotel into legend happened in 1974, when acclaimed author Stephen King stayed there for a single night. During his stay, King reportedly had a vivid and unsettling experience that sparked his imagination. Not long after, he wrote his best-selling novel The Shining, which went on to change the landscape of both horror fiction and cinema forever. From that moment on, the Stanley Hotel ceased to be only a mountain resort. It became a symbol of mystery, fear, and the unknown. Since then, countless accounts from both guests and staff have circulated. People have claimed to see unfamiliar figures wandering the halls, to hear piano music playing late at night when no one was there, and to encounter unusual experiences in certain rooms, most famously, room 217. While no scientific explanation has confirmed these events, the ongoing stories themselves have continued to intrigue, making the Stanley a magnet for curiosity. Today, the Stanley Hotel is not only a historic site, but also a major tourist attraction for mystery seekers. It offers guided tours where visitors can explore the hotel's history, architecture, and, of course, the famous tales of the paranormal. Guests walking through its grand hallways often describe the atmosphere as uniquely charged, somewhere between elegant history and unshakable mystery. What makes the Stanley especially captivating is the way it blends real history, art, and human imagination. Visitors come not just to see a beautiful landmark, but to step inside the very hotel that inspired The Shining. Some may leave with nothing more than an appreciation for its architecture, while others depart with an unforgettable sense of unease. It raises an intriguing question: are these experiences simply the product of suggestion and expectation, or is there truly something unexplainable within these walls? In this video, we will take a closer look at the history of the Stanley Hotel, the stories connected to it, and the reasons why it remains one of America's most talked about haunted hotels. From its early beginnings to the cultural phenomenon it has become today, the Stanley embodies the unique way that fact and folklore can intertwine. So, whether you are someone who firmly believes in the paranormal, or you are simply fascinated by the power of stories that endure across generations, this journey promises to be a captivating one. Before we dive in, do not forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss future videos where we continue exploring the world's greatest mysteries. Now, let us begin our journey into the story of the Stanley Hotel, the real-life inspiration behind The Shining. To fully appreciate why the Stanley Hotel carries such a powerful reputation, we need to first understand its history and the vision behind its creation. Long before it became synonymous with mystery and ghost stories, the Stanley was the dream of a man who sought to build a place of beauty and luxury in the rugged landscapes of Colorado. The story begins with Freelan Oscar Stanley, an American inventor, entrepreneur, and co-founder of the Stanley Motor Carriage Company. Stanley had long struggled with poor health, particularly tuberculosis, which was a serious illness in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Doctors recommended that he spend time in the clean, crisp air of the Rocky Mountains to improve his condition. In the summer of 1903, he and his wife Flora traveled to Estes Park, Colorado. The mountain air not only restored his health but also gave him a deep appreciation for the region. Grateful for this second chance at life, Stanley wanted to give back to the community by building a grand hotel that would match the beauty of its surroundings. By 1909, the Stanley Hotel officially opened its doors. It was built in the style of the grand resorts of the era, combining elegance with modern innovation. Constructed with a colonial revival design, the hotel stood out with its white facade, red roof, and sweeping verandas. From the outside, it looked like a beacon of refinement against the backdrop of the rugged Rocky Mountains. Inside, it offered luxury that rivaled some of the finest hotels on the East Coast. One of the remarkable aspects of the Stanley was its early adoption of modern technology. While many establishments at the time still relied on gas lamps and wood stoves, the Stanley was equipped with electricity, telephones, and running water. In fact, Stanley worked with none other than Thomas Edison to design the hotel's electrical system, making it one of the most advanced facilities of its time. Guests who arrived in Estes Park expecting rustic lodgings were surprised to find such a refined and comfortable retreat. The hotel quickly became a gathering place for the wealthy and prominent. Visitors from across the country came to enjoy its comforts, including the grand dining room, music hall, and, of course, the spectacular views of the surrounding mountains. Flora Stanley, a pianist, often played the hotel's piano in the evenings, filling the halls with music that complemented the sophisticated atmosphere. The Stanley was never intended to be merely a place to sleep. It was designed as a cultural and social hub. Over the decades, the Stanley Hotel developed a rich history tied to both Estes Park and the broader story of American tourism. It hosted countless travelers, dignitaries, and celebrities. While the hotel faced financial ups and downs like many resorts of its kind, it always retained its aura of grandeur. During times when Estes Park's tourism slowed, the hotel became quieter, but never lost its stately presence overlooking the valley. Architecturally, the Stanley is considered a masterpiece of the colonial revival style. Its symmetrical design, large windows, and balanced proportions were meant to convey stability and elegance. The interior featured polished wood, grand staircases, chandeliers, and richly furnished rooms. Guests stepping into the hotel were often struck by the way it balanced comfort with formality, making them feel both at home and in awe. Over time, however, the Stanley became known for more than its beauty. Stories began to circulate of unusual experiences within its walls. These tales, whether rooted in imagination or reality, only enhanced the hotel's mystique. But even before the rise of paranormal lore, the Stanley's historical significance was undeniable. It represented the ambition of one man to bring modern luxury to the mountains, and it stood as a testament to early 20th century innovation and design. By the mid-20th century, the hotel experienced periods of decline. Tourism patterns changed, and maintaining such a large property in a remote location proved challenging. Yet, the Stanley never fully faded from memory. Its architectural charm and historical importance kept it alive, even as it awaited a new chapter. That chapter arrived unexpectedly in 1974, when Stephen King checked in for a brief stay. King and his wife Tabitha were the only guests in the nearly empty hotel as it prepared to close for the winter season. Wandering through its long corridors and dining alone in its vast dining room, King felt an atmosphere unlike any other. That night he dreamed of his young son being chased through the hallways, screaming in terror. He awoke with his heart pounding, and the seed of a novel was born. Within weeks, he began writing what would become The Shining. Although The Shining was not a factual account of the Stanley, the connection between the hotel and the novel forever changed its legacy. Suddenly, the Stanley was no longer just a historic hotel. It became an icon of popular culture. Visitors flocked not only for its beauty and history, but also to experience the place that had inspired one of the greatest horror stories ever written. The hotel embraced this identity, offering tours and events that celebrated its literary connection, while also honoring its history. Today, the Stanley Hotel remains a thriving landmark. It continues to operate as both a luxury resort and a destination for those intrigued by its stories. Its architecture has been carefully preserved, ensuring that guests still experience the grandeur that Freelan Oscar Stanley envisioned more than a century ago. The hotel has also become a hub for cultural events, including film festivals, concerts, and, of course, ghost tours. What makes the Stanley so remarkable is the way it embodies multiple layers of meaning. It is a historic building, a cultural landmark, a work of architecture, and, for many, a place of mystery. Its story is not just about walls and rooms, but about the people who built it, the guests who stayed there, and the countless tales that have emerged over time. In essence, the Stanley Hotel stands as a symbol of how history, imagination, and culture can come together in one place. From its beginnings as a health retreat, to its role as a luxury resort, to its rebirth as a global icon through literature and film, the Stanley has lived many lives. And as long as people continue to visit, to wonder, and to share their stories, its legacy will endure. While the Stanley Hotel's architecture and history make it a landmark in their own right, what has elevated it to worldwide fame are the countless stories of paranormal experiences reported by guests, staff, and visitors over the decades. Whether one believes in ghosts or not, the persistence and consistency of these accounts have made the Stanley one of the most talked about haunted hotels in the United States. In this section, we will dive into the legends, the alleged sightings, and the atmosphere that continues to attract both skeptics and believers. Perhaps the most famous room in the Stanley Hotel is room 217. This particular room gained attention long before Stephen King ever stayed at the hotel. In 1911, a housekeeper named Elizabeth Wilson was injured in a gas explosion while working in room 217. Though she survived, stories soon emerged of her lingering presence in the hotel. Guests who have stayed in this room report unusual activity, luggage being mysteriously unpacked, lights turning on and off, and a faint, unseen presence arranging things neatly, as though a housekeeper were still tending to the room. Some even claim that they have felt a gentle, almost motherly energy watching over them during the night. For many, room 217 has become a focal point of the Stanley's ghostly reputation. Beyond room 217, other parts of the hotel have their own stories. Guests and staff often speak of the Grand Ballroom, where late at night the sound of music has been heard echoing through the halls. The piano, once played regularly by Flora Stanley, is said to sometimes play by itself, with faint notes drifting through the empty room. Visitors have described walking into the ballroom and feeling as if a party had just ended moments before, though no one was there. These reports suggest not an atmosphere of fear, but one of lingering joy, as though the spirit of the hotel's early days remains alive. The fourth floor is another area steeped in lore. Once used as servant quarters and children's rooms, it has become notorious for the sound of footsteps running up and down the hallways, the laughter of unseen children, and doors opening and closing by themselves. Some guests recount the sensation of small hands tugging at their clothing, as though playful children were trying to get their attention. These experiences have made the fourth floor a must-see location for those seeking the hotel's more mischievous paranormal residents. In the concert hall, built by Freelan Oscar Stanley as a gift to his wife Flora, the energy is said to be particularly active. Visitors have reported seeing shadowy figures moving on stage or hearing applause when the hall was empty. One spirit often mentioned is that of Paul, a former worker who enforced curfews for guests. Even today, some say they hear a voice commanding "Get out," echoing in the hall late at night. Strangely, this is not described as threatening, but rather as the lingering voice of someone still carrying out his duties. The underground tunnels beneath the hotel, used historically by staff to move unseen between areas, are also associated with eerie encounters. Visitors have described hearing whispers, feeling sudden cold drafts, or catching fleeting glimpses of figures out of the corner of their eyes. The tunnels, dimly lit and steeped in history, are often included on the hotel's ghost tours, adding to the sense of stepping back into a forgotten past, where the boundary between history and haunting feels especially thin. Perhaps what makes the Stanley's paranormal stories so compelling is not just their variety, but their consistency. Over decades, countless individuals, guests, staff members, paranormal investigators have shared similar experiences. Many come to the hotel skeptical and leave unsettled by things they cannot easily explain. While some accounts can be attributed to imagination, suggestion, or the hotel's atmospheric setting, others remain difficult to dismiss entirely. The Stanley Hotel has leaned into its reputation, offering guided ghost tours that highlight these stories. Visitors are led through the historic rooms, ballrooms, and hallways where unexplained activity has been reported. Tour guides share both historical context and first-hand accounts, leaving guests with the freedom to interpret for themselves. These tours have become so popular that they are now a central feature of the hotel's identity, drawing thousands of tourists annually. Paranormal researchers and television crews have also flocked to the Stanley. Shows like Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures have conducted investigations there, claiming to capture unusual sounds, shadows, or electronic voice phenomena (EVPs). While skeptics argue these are products of equipment glitches or atmospheric interference, believers take them as evidence that the Stanley is indeed inhabited by forces beyond the ordinary. The media attention has only added fuel to the legend, ensuring that the hotel remains a fixture in popular culture. Even Stephen King's brief stay added a supernatural weight to the Stanley's legacy. Although The Shining is a work of fiction, King himself acknowledged that the atmosphere of the near-empty hotel inspired him profoundly. The way the long hallways seemed to stretch endlessly, the isolation of the mountain setting, and the sense of being watched, all of these became the seeds for one of the most iconic horror novels ever written. While King never described encountering a ghost during his stay, the fact that the hotel could ignite such fear in his imagination speaks volumes about its ambience. From a psychological perspective, much of what is reported at the Stanley can be explained as the power of suggestion. Guests arrive already primed with expectations, aware of the stories they may have heard. The creaks of an old building, the drafts that come through historic windows, and the echoes in large halls can all feel amplified in such a context. Our minds are wired to connect the dots, to assign meaning to ambiguous stimuli, and the Stanley provides the perfect stage for those tendencies. Yet, dismissing all experiences as imagination risks ignoring the sheer number and persistence of accounts. Some guests who knew nothing of the stories beforehand have reported encounters similar to those told for decades. Others, including staff members who spend years at the hotel, speak of experiences they cannot rationalize, despite having no incentive to exaggerate. This tension between natural explanation and enduring mystery is precisely what gives the Stanley Hotel its allure. Ultimately, the paranormal legends of the Stanley are less about proving the existence of ghosts and more about the experience of mystery itself. People come seeking the thrill of the unknown, the chance to step into a space where history and folklore overlap. The hotel's atmosphere, combined with its stories, creates an environment where imagination runs wild, and where even the most skeptical may find themselves second-guessing what they hear, see, or feel. In this way, the Stanley Hotel has transcended its role as a simple mountain resort. It has become a living legend, a place where every creak, shadow, and whisper carries the weight of decades of storytelling. Whether you view these experiences as genuine paranormal encounters, or as the echoes of history amplified by the human mind. They are undeniably part of what makes the Stanley unforgettable. The Stanley Hotel's transformation from a luxury mountain resort into a global cultural icon is one of the most fascinating aspects of its legacy. While its history and paranormal reputation provide the foundation, it is the way these stories have been retold, adapted, and expanded through books, films, television, and popular culture that has elevated the Stanley into something much larger than the building itself. The hotel is no longer just a destination in Estes Park, it is a symbol recognized around the Sac-A-Lait world, representing both mystery and the power of storytelling. The cultural shift began in 1977 with the publication of Stephen King's novel The Shining. Though the story was fictional, King's inspiration came directly from his overnight stay at the Stanley in 1974. The novel told the tale of a family caretaking an isolated hotel during the winter, where supernatural forces slowly drive the father into madness. While the fictional Overlook Hotel was not a direct replica of the Stanley, its influence was unmistakable. Readers were captivated by the atmosphere of dread King conjured, and the Stanley became forever linked with that vision of a grand hotel haunted by both history and imagination. The influence grew exponentially with the release of Stanley Kubrick's 1980 film adaptation of The Shining. Starring Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall, the movie became one of the most iconic horror films ever made. Its imagery, the endless hallways, the hedge maze, the phrase, "Here's Johnny," entered pop culture permanently. Although Kubrick did not film at the Stanley, he shot most scenes on sets and in other locations. Audiences nonetheless connected the hotel to the movie's eerie atmosphere. For many, the Stanley became the Shining Hotel, even if it looked somewhat different in reality. Later, in 1997, a television miniseries of The Shining, written by Stephen King himself, was filmed on location at the Stanley. This adaptation brought the hotel directly onto screens, solidifying its connection to the story in a way Kubrick's film had not. For King, who had been critical of Kubrick's interpretation, filming at the Stanley was a way of reclaiming the hotel's role in his creative process. Audiences too embraced seeing the real inspiration brought to life. From that point on, the Stanley embraced its association with The Shining. The hotel began hosting events, screenings, and tours dedicated to the novel and film. Fans of both King and Kubrick's work traveled from around the world to visit. Many came not just for the possibility of encountering ghosts, but to stand in the halls that had given birth to one of horror's greatest works. Beyond The Shining, the Stanley has appeared in numerous television shows, documentaries, and paranormal investigation series. Programs like Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and Destination Truth have all featured the hotel, often presenting it as one of America's premier haunted destinations. These shows amplified its mystique, showcasing investigators who claimed to capture unexplained voices, shadows, or cold spots. Whether audiences believed or not, the Stanley's reputation grew with each broadcast. The hotel has also become a destination for cultural events. The Stanley Film Festival, launched in 2013, celebrated independent horror cinema, drawing filmmakers and fans from across the globe. Concerts, conventions, and themed weekends regularly take place there, turning the hotel into a hub for creative communities who revel in its Gothic charm. For many, attending these events is less about paranormal investigation and more about being part of a living legend, a place where art and myth intersect. Popular culture beyond film and television has embraced the Stanley as well. Countless books, articles, and podcasts revisit its history, blending fact with folklore. Musicians, artists, and writers reference the hotel as a symbol of haunted grandeur. Even comedy sketches and parodies have drawn on The Shining and its connection to the Stanley, proving how deeply the story has embedded itself into collective consciousness. Tourism has been perhaps the most tangible cultural outcome. Each year, thousands of visitors travel to Estes Park not only to see the natural beauty of the Rocky Mountains, but to step inside the Stanley Hotel. Some come as fans of Stephen King, eager to connect with the setting that inspired his imagination. Others arrive drawn by paranormal curiosity, hoping to catch a glimpse of something unexplained. For the town of Estes Park, the Stanley has become both an economic engine and a cultural landmark. The Stanley's influence also highlights a broader phenomenon: the power of place in storytelling. While novels and films can create fictional worlds, the fact that the Stanley exists as a real physical location adds depth to its legend. Visitors can touch its walls, walk its halls, and sleep in its rooms. This tangible connection between story and reality enhances the emotional impact, making the experience more than just a narrative. It becomes an immersion into living folklore. Critically, the Stanley's cultural influence demonstrates how myth and marketing can intertwine. The hotel could have chosen to downplay or deny its paranormal reputation, but instead it embraced it, turning ghost tours and haunted legends into part of its identity. This choice has ensured its survival not only as a business, but as an enduring cultural phenomenon. By blending history, myth, and entertainment, the Stanley has created a brand unlike any other. At the same time, its influence underscores the enduring appeal of mystery. In an age where technology explains so much, places like the Stanley offer a rare sense of the unknown. Whether visitors actually encounter paranormal activity is almost beside the point. What matters is the feeling, the shiver down the spine, the heightened awareness in an old hallway, the thrill of standing in a place where countless others have claimed to experience the unexplainable. This emotional resonance is what keeps the Stanley alive in culture. In conclusion, the Stanley Hotel's cultural influence cannot be overstated. From inspiring Stephen King's The Shining, to appearing in global media, to becoming a hub for fans of horror and mystery, it has transcended its original purpose as a resort. Today it stands as a symbol of how history, myth, and imagination can merge to create something timeless. Visitors may come for the beauty of the mountains, for the allure of King's novel, or for the chance to encounter the supernatural. But whatever the reason, they leave knowing they have touched a piece of living legend. For every story told about the Stanley Hotel's eerie atmosphere, there has been a counterpoint of doubt. While the hotel has become one of America's most famous haunted landmarks, it is also one of the most contested. Believers insist that the consistent reports of unexplained activity are proof of the paranormal, while skeptics argue that the stories are shaped by psychology, suggestion, and the powerful influence of popular culture. This tension between those who accept the hotel's legends and those who dismiss them has fueled the Stanley's reputation for decades. One of the central controversies stems from the reliability of eyewitness accounts. Guests and staff have described apparitions, strange sounds, and objects moving on their own. But critics point out that personal testimony is notoriously unreliable. In the Stanley's case, the setting itself primes visitors for unusual perceptions. People arrive already aware of its haunted reputation, often having read The Shining or watched the film. In such an environment, ordinary creaks of an old building, shifting light, or drafts can easily be interpreted as paranormal. Psychologists call this the power of suggestion. Our brains fill in the blanks with expectations shaped by stories we have already heard. The influence of Stephen King's novel and Stanley Kubrick's film is another major factor in the skepticism. Before 1977, the Stanley was a historic hotel with some local ghost stories but little global fame. After The Shining, it became world-renowned. Skeptics argue that the flood of paranormal reports since then may owe more to cultural expectations than to actual events. When visitors walk through the halls thinking of Jack Nicholson's Here's Johnny, or the novel's ghostly Overlook Hotel, They may unconsciously heighten their sensitivity to every noise and shadow. In this sense, the Stanley became less a site of supernatural events and more a stage set for the imagination. Paranormal television shows have also fueled debate. Programs like Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures have filmed at the Stanley, often claiming to capture unusual sounds, electromagnetic fluctuations, or fleeting shadows. Believers point to these recordings as evidence, but skeptics note that such shows are entertainment first, science second. Critics highlight that no investigation has ever produced peer-reviewed scientific evidence of paranormal activity at the Stanley or anywhere else, for that matter. To skeptics, this underscores the idea that these shows amplify minor anomalies to reinforce a pre-existing narrative. Another controversy arises from the hotel's own marketing. In recent decades, the Stanley has leaned heavily into its haunted image, offering ghost tours and paranormal events. While this has been a financial success, skeptics argue that it incentivizes exaggeration. They claim that stories may be embellished or even invented because they draw tourists. From this perspective, the Stanley's haunting is less about supernatural forces and more about economic ones. The legends sell rooms, tickets, and merchandise. However, it would be simplistic to dismiss all reports as mere fabrication. Some staff members who have worked at the Stanley for years have shared accounts of strange experiences, often reluctantly. Unlike guests, they have little reason to exaggerate. These include footsteps in empty hallways, voices when no one is there, or the sensation of being touched when alone. Skeptics counter that fatigue, imagination, and the hotel's creaking old structure can account for such experiences. Still, the consistency of certain reports, such as the activity in room 217 or the concert hall, has kept the debate alive. The role of history adds another layer to the controversy. The story of Elizabeth Wilson, the housekeeper injured in a 1911 explosion in room 217, is often cited as the origin of that room's paranormal reputation. Believers see her as a benevolent presence, still tending to guests. Skeptics, however, argue that the tale has been romanticized over time. Wilson lived to old age, and there is no evidence she lingered in the hotel after her death. Instead, skeptics view the story as folklore, shaped by decades of retelling, until it became truth in the public mind. Skeptics also emphasize the psychological impact of isolation and atmosphere. The Stanley is a large, old building in a mountainous region. Its long hallways, antique furnishings, and echoing chambers naturally create an uncanny feeling. Add to this the fact that the hotel can feel particularly empty during off-seasons, and it is easy to see how the human mind might project fear or unease. The same qualities that inspired Stephen King's loneliness, vast spaces, silence, are also the qualities that lead guests to interpret their experiences as paranormal. From the perspective of scientific investigation, the Stanley has never provided verifiable proof of ghosts. Instruments used by paranormal groups such as EMF detectors, spirit boxes, and thermal cameras do not meet the rigorous standards of science. Anomalies recorded on these devices may have mundane explanations: wiring, natural temperature changes, or interference. Without controlled experiments, skeptics argue, claims of evidence remain anecdotes rather than data. Still, it is worth noting that believers do not necessarily require scientific validation. For them, the accumulation of stories across generations is enough. The fact that guests from different backgrounds report similar experiences gives the legends credibility in their eyes. In this way, the Stanley represents a clash between two worldviews, one grounded in empirical evidence, the other in collective narrative. Interestingly, some critics suggest that the Stanley's reputation might actually benefit from skepticism. If the stories were universally accepted, they might lose their allure. It is the ongoing debate, the fact that the hotel's paranormal status is never conclusively proven or disproven, that keeps people returning. Each visitor hopes to resolve the mystery for themselves, whether by capturing a photograph, hearing an unexplained sound, or simply walking away unconvinced. The controversy itself is the engine of the Stanley's legend. At the same time, skeptics and believers alike often agree on one point: the Stanley's atmosphere is unique. Whether or not one encounters anything paranormal, the setting inspires reflection and imagination. Its historic architecture, its connection to The Shining, and its long-standing stories combine to create a psychological environment unlike any other. Even skeptics admit that spending a night alone in room 217 with the weight of history and legend pressing in can stir the imagination in powerful ways. In the end, the controversies surrounding the Stanley Hotel reveal as much about human psychology and culture as they do about the hotel itself. Believers demonstrate humanity's need for wonder, mystery, and the possibility of worlds beyond our own. Skeptics reveal our drive for evidence, reason, and clarity. The Stanley sits at the intersection of these impulses, a place where imagination and inquiry meet. The skepticism will likely never end, nor will the stories, and perhaps that is the Stanley Hotel's greatest secret. It thrives not on answers but on questions. The debates, the doubts, and the mysteries ensure its survival as a cultural landmark. For every person who dismisses it as myth, another arrives, hoping to experience something beyond explanation. The Stanley Hotel today stands as more than just a luxury resort, more than just a historic landmark, and more than just the supposed home of wandering spirits. Its true legacy lies in its ability to bridge the worlds of history, imagination, and popular culture. It has become a place where the past meets myth, where architecture is infused with legend, and where visitors from around the globe come not simply to stay the vacation or night, but to experience a story. At the heart of this legacy is the way the Stanley Hotel has transformed into a symbol of cultural fascination. Unlike many other historic resorts that eventually faded into obscurity, the Stanley was reborn through its association with Stephen King's The Shining and the countless paranormal stories that followed. This dual identity, both as a place of real history and as a stage for imagination, ensures its survival. Visitors do not just check into a hotel, they step into a living narrative that has been retold for nearly half a century. One of the most enduring aspects of the Stanley's legacy is its role as a storytelling landmark. Humans have always been drawn to places with legends, and the Stanley provides one of the most compelling examples. Guests enter expecting something extraordinary, and that expectation becomes part of the experience. For some, the hotel is a gateway into the literary world of The Shining. For others, it is a chance to confront the mystery of the paranormal, and for many, it is simply an opportunity to walk through history, marveling at the architecture and the vision of Freelan Oscar Stanley. Few places manage to embody so many layers of meaning at once. The Stanley's continued cultural influence also underscores the power of setting. For Stephen King, the nearly empty hotel on a cold winter night became the spark for a story that has terrified and fascinated millions. For filmmakers, it became an icon. Even when Kubrick did not film at the Stanley, audiences still linked the hotel to his chilling adaptation. For fans, the hotel has become a pilgrimage site, where fiction and reality merge. This blending of worlds is a key part of its legacy. The Stanley is not simply a backdrop, it is a character in its own right. Economically, the Stanley has also left a significant mark. What began as a luxury retreat for the wealthy has transformed into a destination that fuels the local economy of Estes Park. Tourists flock to the area not only for the natural beauty of the Rocky Mountains, but also to see the legendary hotel. Ghost tours, film festivals, cultural events, and regular tourism keep the Stanley alive as both a business and a community asset. Its ability to reinvent itself across eras, from luxury resort to struggling relic to cultural icon, illustrates resilience and adaptability. On a deeper level, the Stanley Hotel's legacy highlights humanity's enduring relationship with mystery. In an age dominated by technology and science, where so much of the world is mapped and explained, people still crave spaces where the unknown lingers. The Stanley satisfies this craving. Even skeptics who may dismiss the ghost stories as folklore cannot deny the emotional impact of standing in its dim hallways, listening to the creaks of its century-old structure and recalling the stories told within its walls. The hotel represents the power of suggestion, of imagination, and of our need for wonder. Interestingly, the Stanley's legacy also reflects the balance between skepticism and belief. For every guest who swears they saw a shadow or heard unexplained piano notes, there is another who insists it was nothing but old pipes and creaking wood. This tension keeps the story alive. If the hotel were universally believed to be haunted, the mystery might fade into acceptance. If it were universally debunked, the legend might die. But because it exists in the grey space between, its story continues to thrive. Another important dimension of its legacy is its impact on the horror genre. The success of The Shining, both King's novel and Kubrick's film, helped popularize the haunted hotel as a trope in literature and cinema. Countless films, books, and TV shows owe a debt to the Stanley for inspiring the archetype of the grand, isolated, and unsettling hotel. The Stanley's legend set the stage for entire subgenres of horror, demonstrating the enduring influence of place-based storytelling. The Stanley also serves as a mirror of human fears. Its ghost stories are not only about apparitions or noises. They tap into universal anxieties, the idea of being isolated in a vast, empty space, the unease of hearing footsteps when no one is there, the unsettling thought that history never truly leaves, and that the past may continue to echo in the present. These are fears that transcend culture and time, and the Stanley embodies them perfectly. In recent years, the Stanley has continued to build on its legacy by embracing its role in both history and myth. Preservation efforts have ensured that the hotel retains its early 20th century grandeur, while new events and programs connect it to contemporary culture. Ghost tours remain popular, but so do film festivals, concerts, and art exhibits. The Stanley has become a place where people not only seek scares but also celebrate creativity, storytelling, and community. Perhaps the most striking element of the Stanley's legacy is its timelessness. Built over a century ago, it has survived economic struggles, cultural shifts, and waves of skepticism, and yet it continues to captivate new generations. For some, it is a luxurious mountain resort. For others, it is a haunted landmark. For still others, it is a piece of horror history. This multifaceted identity ensures that the Stanley will remain relevant for decades to come. In essence, the legacy of the Stanley Hotel is not about whether ghosts truly exist within its walls. It is about the way the hotel has captured the imagination of millions. It stands as proof that stories, whether rooted in fact, fiction, or somewhere in between, have the power to shape reality. Guests who visit may or may not encounter something unexplainable, but they will leave with a story to tell. And that, ultimately, is what ensures the Stanley's place in history. As long as people seek mystery, as long as they are drawn to the line between truth and legend, the Stanley Hotel will remain alive in cultural memory. It is not only a building but an idea, a reminder that the world still holds places where imagination reigns, where history and myth converge, and where the unknown lingers just beyond the edges of explanation. As we reach the final chapter of our exploration of the Stanley Hotel, it becomes clear that its significance goes far beyond being a historic building in the Rocky Mountains. The Stanley is not simply a hotel, not simply a setting for ghost stories, and not simply the inspiration behind The Shining. It is a living legend, one that embodies the power of history, imagination, and cultural storytelling. Its enduring presence reveals profound lessons about human psychology, belief, and the timeless allure of the mysterious. The first lesson the Stanley Hotel teaches us is about the fragility of perception and the power of atmosphere. A building is, at its core, wood, stone, and glass. But the stories we attach to it transform it into something much greater. At the Stanley, long hallways and creaking floors are not just architectural features. They are stages upon which the mind projects meaning. Visitors expecting mystery often find it, even if what they experience could be explained by natural causes. This reveals the deep role of imagination in shaping reality. The Stanley reminds us that perception is not neutral. Our expectations color what we see, hear, and feel. Second, the Stanley illustrates the power of storytelling to outlast fact. Elizabeth Wilson's accident in room 217 happened more than a century ago, yet it continues to live on in ghost stories told to guests each night. Whether or not she truly lingers there is almost beside the point. What matters is that her story has been retold so often that it has become part of the hotel's identity. Similarly, Stephen King's Single Night at the Stanley birthed a novel that reshaped horror culture forever. These examples show how stories, once released into the world, take on lives of their own. They can eclipse facts, becoming more influential than reality itself. A third lesson lies in the interplay between belief and skepticism. The Stanley thrives precisely because it occupies a gray zone between the two. If it were proven beyond doubt to be haunted, it would lose some of its mystery. If it were definitively disproven, the legend might fade. But because it is unresolved, it invites endless debate, drawing believers and skeptics alike. This reflects a universal truth. Humans are drawn not to certainty, but to mystery. The unknown captures our imagination in ways that simple answers cannot. The Stanley's enduring power lies in this delicate balance. The hotel also demonstrates the enduring human need for places of mystery. In a world where technology explains so much, and science maps every corner, there is still a hunger for the unexplainable. The Stanley offers a physical space where people can reconnect with that hunger. Walking its corridors, hearing a piano note echo in an empty room, or simply knowing its stories, all these experiences give visitors a sense of wonder that modern life often lacks. The lesson here is that mystery is not something to be solved, but something to be experienced. The Stanley further reminds us of the interconnection between history and imagination. Its paranormal reputation is inseparable from its real history. The health struggles of Freelan Oscar Stanley, the construction of the hotel, the decades of guests, the accident of Elizabeth Wilson, and the visit of Stephen King. Each layer of history contributes to the legend. At the same time, imagination amplifies those facts into folklore. The Stanley's legacy shows that myth and reality are not opposites, but partners in shaping cultural memory. From a cultural standpoint, the Stanley Hotel highlights the economic and social power of myth. By embracing its haunted reputation, the hotel ensured its survival and even prosperity. Ghost tours, film festivals, and paranormal events not only entertain visitors, but also sustain the local economy of Estes Park. What might have been a declining historic resort became a thriving destination. The lesson here is that stories are not just entertainment, they are resources, capable of reviving entire communities. Perhaps one of the most profound lessons is that the Stanley is a mirror for human fear and desire. The ghost stories told there are not really about ghosts, they are about us. They reflect our fear of isolation, our unease with the unknown, and our hope that life may continue beyond death. At the same time, they reveal our desire for connection to history, for meaning in the unexplained, and for experiences that transcend the ordinary. The Stanley holds a mirror up to humanity's deepest questions and longings. As we reflect on its legacy, the Stanley Hotel can also be seen as a lesson in the resilience of place. Built in 1909, As a retreat for health and leisure, it has reinvented itself time and again. From luxury resort, to fading relic, to pop culture icon, the Stanley proves that places can evolve and adapt as society changes. Its ability to survive demonstrates the enduring value of places that combine history with narrative. Ultimately, the Stanley Hotel teaches us that the greatest mysteries are not always meant to be solved. Its walls may or may not hold spirits, but they unquestionably hold stories. Stories that inspire, unsettle, and fascinate. And those stories will outlive us all. Whether you visit for the architecture, the literary connection, the paranormal tours, or simply the beauty of Estes Park, you leave with more than a memory. You leave as part of an ongoing legend. The conclusion we can draw is this: the Stanley Hotel is not haunted by ghosts, it is haunted by stories. Stories of a visionary man who built a retreat in the mountains. Stories of a novelist who found inspiration in its empty halls. Stories of guests who felt unseen presences, of skeptics who felt nothing, and of countless others who carried those stories into the world. It is haunted by our collective imagination, which ensures that the legend will endure for generations to come. As we close this journey, let us remember that places like the Stanley endure not because of what they prove, but because of what they provoke. They make us ask questions, they spark our imagination, and they remind us that mystery still exists in the world. In an age of certainty, the Stanley invites us to embrace uncertainty, to stand in a place where history, myth, and mystery converge, and to marvel at the fact that sometimes the unknown is the most powerful presence of all. Thank you for joining this exploration of the Stanley Hotel. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of America's most enduring legends, do not forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Stay tuned for more stories of mystery, history, and imagination from around the world.